Hey everybody, I'm here with Jason once again today, Oxen core dev and local community hero. Everybody's favorite is back. So today we're going to be talking about service node batching, which is an upcoming feature that's going to be added to Oxen core. So first things first, Jason, I guess for those who don't know or haven't been in the loop, can you just explain a little bit about what service node batching actually is?
Yeah, so for a long time, we've had activity on the network where probably most people who are staked in more than a small number of service nodes will know that your wallet kind of fills up, and you have to do this sweep before you can stake into a new transaction. If you have a lot of Oxen staked in a lot of service nodes, you'll be really familiar with it. And then some people just don't collect their rewards for a long time, and they have to do these sweeps. So we kind of said, well, the reason that we're having to do these sweeps is because we've got people who are earning a lot of rewards over maybe a couple months or however often you want to do something with those rewards. And you're earning them spread across a whole bunch of different service nodes. So we wanted to say, well, let's figure out if we can address that problem so that we can reduce how much actually gets put on the blockchain without meaningfully affecting your rewards. So batching is a way of saying, okay, instead of the current mechanism, and I'll just diverge into that for a second, but right now the way that things work is you stake into a service node, and every block that service node climbs one spot on the list. And then it gets to the top of the list and it earns a reward of currently 16 and a half Oxen, and then it gets bumped back to the bottom of the list and it starts its climb up again. So if you're staked in, say, 20 different service nodes, then over, I think we've got about 1,700 nodes on the network right now, you would get maybe 10 different payments as your 10 different service nodes get to the top of the list. So we said, okay, well, let's go back, and instead of saying we're going to pay you out instantly as soon as you get it, batching is saying what we're going to do is when you are scheduled to earn that reward, we're just going to make a note that you're owed, maybe it's 16.5 if it's your own solo node, or if you're staked into one of them, maybe you earn 5 Oxen or something when it gets a reward. So for batching, what we do is say all the nodes on the network are going to track your owed balance, and then every roughly 3.5 days, we haven't totally nailed down the number, but 3.5 is sort of what we're targeting, so you get it twice a week. Every time that comes up, you will get paid your outstanding balance. So you would, over time, you're going to be earning exactly the same thing, but you're going to be doing it in one payment every 3.5 days, rather than maybe 10 payments over 2.5 days, or however long it takes to cycle through that list. So batching is just a way of saying, okay, we're going to compress all those rewards that you might earn and just pay you out once per time period, no matter how many rewards you earn in that period. Now, we've had batching for quite a while for one wallet in particular, which is the Foundation wallet. So early on, in early hard forks, that wallet would earn one reward of, I think for these early amounts it was 5%. It would earn that in every single block. So there would be this payment of this just small amount in one block and the next block and the next one and the next one. And I remember at one point speaking to Simon about wanting to actually clear that wallet. And that wallet is stored on a machine that's isolated and locked down. And it had to be booted up, and then it had to sit there just to prepare a transaction to actually clear out all those transactions to send them to the network. And I think it took on the order of several hours, just because there was so much in it. So in I guess it was Loki at the time, I want to say 3 or 4 around there, we actually added batching for that governance wallet. So it gets paid every, I think once a week. It gets a payment of whatever it's earned over that period. Because for that wallet, it was just totally unreasonable to just have it at every stage. So this is about sort of making that more generic and say, well, let's apply that same batching principle to all wallets on the network and make wallets a little more manageable and do some other good things that we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah, so like you said, it's going to make wallets more manageable. So I suppose let's go into a little bit more about for operators and stakers, people that are contributing to service nodes. What is the benefit and what are the sort of material gains that they'll get out of service node batching?
So I mentioned it a little bit, that one of the benefits here is your wallet's going to be smaller because you just have fewer stuff going into it. But in terms of the benefit, mainly what you're going to see is that benefits, direct benefits anyway, are that the blockchain is smaller and it means there's fewer transactions for you to scan, and that makes wallet scanning a little faster. Not major things, but you're also going to see a benefit if you are staked in a lot of service nodes, because you're not going to have to do those massive sweeps that, you go to stake. I think anyone who's probably staked in more than about 4 or 5 service nodes knows this experience, that you go to stake and you get an error that you couldn't stake this transaction because it's because the way our stakes work, you have to be able to combine all those transactions into one stake, because that single stake has to satisfy the requirements. So that process of having to wait around for, you say, oh shoot, I forgot to sweep, and then I have to sweep that onto the blockchain, then I have to wait for that to unlock, and then I have to submit that stake again. So that's probably annoyed a fair number of people. And they say, okay, I'm all ready, let's sit down and stake. Oh wait, I gotta sweep and I gotta wait. So it'll eliminate that, and that's always nice. It also eliminates like those sweep transactions. The reason that you have to do that is because to combine a whole bunch of small transactions, it results in a pretty hefty transaction. And we have a transaction limit of 100 kilobytes just for one single transaction. So anytime you have to sweep is when combining all that stuff would take up more than 100. We want to get rid of that, and that'll just reduce the size of the blockchain, especially blockchain growth, which is a worthy goal on its own going forward. But I think the most exciting part is what we can do.
Yeah, well, and you've touched on this.
Batching.
You've touched on this a little bit already, but I suppose other than for the stakers and the operators, what are some of the other benefits that we're going to get out of having service node batching?
So when we first talked about batching internally, batching on its own, like I said, it can reduce some blockchain size and make your wallets a little faster. Those aren't huge benefits. And so probably if that was the only thing, we wouldn't have undertaken it in the first place. But some of the cool things that you will allow, there's one that's kind of cool, and there's one that is probably more of a big deal. So the one that's kind of cool is one of the things we're going to put in here before we release it is something that I'm sort of informally calling drip rewards. So this is essentially we're going to change the way that you earn as an operator, as a staker. So that instead of saying in that process where I start at the bottom and I climb all the way up to the top, I get to the top and then I earn 16.5 and I drop back down to the bottom and I got to climb all the way up again. What we're going to do instead is say that every block, rather than, you're going to earn a tiny amount. So, I ran some math beforehand. I'll hand it to you. You can maybe stick it in an overlay or something here. But so if we have a reward that you're going to earn of 16.5 every cycle, and you have 1,768 service nodes, then what is going to happen now is rather than you wait and wait and wait and wait, and then you get 16.5, every block you're going to earn a tiny amount. So it works out to about 0.0093 Oxen that you would earn accumulating in this account of Oxen that's owed to you. You'd earn that every single block. So attached to this, we'll have the wallet actually show your earned unpaid amount. So you can just sit there and stare at your wallet, and every 2 minutes it's going to tick up by just a little tiny bit, which is kind of cool. It's mainly cool for psychological reasons, though. At the end of the day, you're going to be earning exactly the same amount, but it's kind of addictive to just watch it and see it just slowly drip in. It makes you feel like, yeah, I'm earning things constantly.
Yeah, that's a fun feeling.
It is, and really the reason we're putting that in is because it's pretty easy to do that, and it has that kind of that neat feeling to it. There'll be a couple other changes around then. So one of the things that we may that will probably change is if you get decommissioned and recommissioned. Currently, that means you start off at the bottom of the list again. So you might have climbed up a little ways, and then something happens on your server, and it goes down for a few hours. It gets decommissioned. When you come back in, you start right at the bottom again. So you would have skipped earning any reward. So to kind of replicate that, to make sure that people try and keep their servers up, what we're probably going to do is say that you will have to, before you start earning rewards, you'll have to have been active on the network for a day, maybe. So in the end, it should work out roughly the same. Might be a little bit worse for you if your service node goes down frequently, but we don't want that, so that's okay.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, actually, just sorry to interrupt, but with batching and the way that it works, say, for example, somebody's operating multiple service nodes and one of them goes down, will they then lose an entire batch payment, or how will the rewards work when a part of, or one service node goes down in a batch?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we really don't want to say, oh, well, I went down and now I'm worse off because of batching. So the way that batching works is you earn, as soon as your wallet earns a reward, that is just held for you. And whatever happens to that service node, totally irrelevant. As you've got an amount, it's associated with your wallet. Once you get to that payout threshold after 3.5 days, you get whatever is owed to you. It doesn't matter what's happened to your service nodes. They may have gone away. They may have all crashed and got deregistered. But it doesn't matter. Whatever you earned up to the point that happens, that's yours. That's destined for your wallet.
So yeah, what are some of the what are some more of the cool things that batching will enable?
So the other thing, so I did say there were two, and that was the cool one. The other one, which is kind of cool, but for bringing more people into Oxen, I think, is it's going to allow us to change the staking structure. So currently, for a very long time, in fact, I think since the very beginning, we've allowed 4 people to stake in a service node. And the reason predominantly that we've done that is because the more people you have in a service node, the more of these little tiny payments that you get. And so those sort of build up on the blockchain, and then you get more sweeps as a result of that. And it just, we wanted to kind of limit growth. Well, batching lets us do that without having to worry so much about the numbers. So one of the things that we've been thinking about doing is reworking the way that, reworking the staking requirements. So tentatively, what we have in mind is that we're going to keep the 25% requirement for an operator. So if you want to operate, we need you to have a substantial stake in your service node so that you care about keeping it up. Mm-hmm. So an operator will still have to put 25%. But beyond that, we're thinking of allowing 9 spots for potential contributors. So that would mean each spot is, I don't know, you'll have to do the math on it, but it's, I think, something around 900 maybe.
We can bring that up.
Yeah, whatever it comes out to. Maybe it's around probably around 1,000. 1250. I'm going to go with 1250.
All right.
So that'll be the minimum contribution. In fact, it is 1250.
Yeah.
So that'll be the minimum contribution. Effectively, that'll be like the largest minimum contribution possible. So it'll still have all the same rules that if someone contributes more than the minimum, then later people will get to contribute a little bit less than the minimum. But a lot of the things that we've seen are people coming in and saying, well, I want to stake some, but 3750 Oxen is rather a lot. Mm-hmm. And if I have a pool of 1,000 Oxen, it's really difficult for me to find a staking spot. Especially quite recently, right now I think there are no free service nodes. There have been for a couple weeks. It's just, I guess, I'm not exactly sure why, but what we've seen is that the operator fees are climbing. Well, okay.
Yeah.
So what we want to try and do is make it a little bit more accessible for people to stake, and batching will let us do that because we don't have to worry about a big increase to the blockchain size.
Yeah.
So that's those are tentative numbers for now, but this idea that we're going to have 10 people including the operator, is where what we really want to do as the sort of the killer feature of batching, is it lets us accomplish that. There's some other things that we have to work out a little bit. I'll get you to add a link to this video on this section here, but we have some discussion talking about all of this and talking about revising staking rules in an Oxen improvement proposal. But so one of the things we do need to think about a little bit before we can bring this in is what are we going to do about people unlocking? Because if you've got 9 small people in a service node, as an operator, you say, well, this is kind of a pain because I'm going to expect that people are unlocking all the time, and I just have to continually re-register. And that's a pain. So we have thought about a couple of things. One of them, that if you're below a certain threshold, you would have to wait a certain amount of time before you able to start unlocking. But I think a better idea that has been proposed is we have a concept called replaceable contributions. So when you start to initiate an unlock, you'd still start this 15-day timer, but at any point during that, your spot essentially would open up for someone else to be able to contribute to. So you might look at what's out there and you could say, well, here are the service nodes awaiting rewards, but here are some other ones that are unlocking and I could jump into and replace those contributions. So that's lets people still get out of their stake, but also should reduce the burden on operators of having to say, well, someone's unlocking, here we go again, set up a new registration and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where we're going at the moment with what batching lets us do.
Another aspect, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but by lowering that requirement to stake, could this also help further decentralize by lowering that barrier of entry, decentralize the holding of Oxen and who holds Oxen and how Oxen is concentrated in certain wallets?
I don't really know how much concentration there is because, of course, we're a privacy coin. But the thing that I like about it is it gives us some ability to kind of spread it out among small holders. Because right now, if you're looking at it and you're saying, hey, I want to get involved in this project, I don't know much about it, sounds like a cool idea, maybe I'll drop $500 on it and see where it goes. Well, you can do that, but that right now that doesn't get you into the system because it doesn't hit that 3750 threshold. So yeah, I'm my hope is that this allows more people to come into the community, makes it a little bit more accessible financially for people to come in, and hopefully that drives decentralization of holdings. But who knows if it'll work, because we can see how much people have staked, but if one person has 10 different wallets that they're staking, it might look like we have more than we actually do. So the obstacles of privacy. Yeah,
a necessary evil, I would say. Well, now that presumably we've gotten people excited about service node batching and the idea, how is development going?
So batching itself has been running now on testnet for I think at least a couple of months, and it's looking pretty good. Now we haven't rolled this out yet because we kind of want to get some of these other things built into it. So it's going to depend a little bit on when we kind of need to make a new release. So if you remember our last, we had this sort of semi-soft fork or whatever we called it. Maybe it was a spork or something. So it was like a mandatory upgrade for service node operators. But it wasn't mandatory for wallets and so on. So if something comes up that we need to put out a new release of, like LokiNet and of the storage server for session, then we might say, okay, well, we'll put out at the same time what we have for batching in core. But if nothing comes out like that for a while, then I think ideally what we want to do is to build these extra features like changing the staking requirements and replaceable contributions in, and then sort of do it in one big release that changes a bunch of things.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that big release, I suppose there's lots of moving pieces here with, like you said, with wallets, service node operators, How will the rollout actually work for batching?
So it'll be a mandatory upgrade of all the nodes in the network, just like sort of anytime that we change things fundamental to the blockchain, that's kind of necessary. For wallets, it won't be a big change. So the existing wallet 2 code, it'll cope just fine with batching, because it won't actually see. Because with batching, what happens is you get one payment that enters the blockchain at a certain point. The wallet sees it, says, "Hey, that's mine," adds it to your balance. So there's not a lot that we have to do in terms of wallets, in terms of user-facing stuff. I think probably the only change that has to be done for wallets is making it go fetch all the pending balances, so that you can see your rewards kind of drip in. Because if you don't have that, you can say, well, okay, they're dripping in, but I can't see it, so who cares? So that's kind of feeding into the psychology. But in terms of updates, it would be just like any of our hard forks. That here's a mandatory upgrade for service nodes and network nodes and wallets. You install the update, and there you go. Now you have batching.
Perfect. Well, unless you have any last remarks, I think that should be the perfect introduction and teaser for people for service node batching.
Yeah, I hope so. I don't want to drop any more hints, because then people are going to say, "Oh, but you said this thing," and then that thing might not happen. Who knows?
The curse of being a developer.
Oh, hey, yeah. Wallet 3 though.
Oh yeah.
Wallet 3 will be perfect for batching. So if we get that ready around the same time as batching, that could be a big, exciting release. We'll have to see though.
Well, big things coming next year. All right. Well, perfect. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today, Jason. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we will see you next time.